Hey there. Welcome to Head, Heart, and Hustle, the podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Alan Plummer, and as always, I want to thank you for listening. I certainly appreciate it. Now, anyone with a side hustle or creative outlet can feel isolated from their friends, their family, and from others around them who just don't get their passion. And that's why Head, Heart, and Hustle exists, to help you feel motivated, learn, and just get a pick-me-up of creative energy from other people like yourself. Every episode, I interview a creative individual who doesn't just pretend to be creative. They've rolled up their sleeves and are producing great things because they need to. They know that being creative is part of who they are. Does that sound familiar? Good, then you're in the right place. Now, today we have an interview with Daniel Cousins. Daniel is an actor and musician in New York City, although maybe he would switch it the other way around. He's a lifelong musician, plays guitars, makes his own albums, has an apartment full of synthesizers and keyboards, creates certainly modern kind of alternative music. But I was really excited to kind of get a chance to speak with him. He is a great guy. I met him through the podcast. He reached out to me after listening through a few episodes. I was certainly excited to kind of get him on the phone and have a conversation. I hope you enjoy this one. So let's dive in. So Daniel, good morning. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. How you doing, Alan?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this. It's taking a little bit of logistic work to kind of get us together. Your schedule is probably as busy as mine, it sounds like. So thank you for taking time to do this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. So as you know, we like to start out all of our discussions with asking our guests to introduce themselves and talk a little about who they are and what they do, and we'll dive in from there.
Sure thing. Well, yeah, I'm Daniel Cousins. I'm a musician and producer and wannabe actor. I guess wannabe producer and musician too, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, I've been doing music now for, gosh, I guess 30 years this year, if that tells you how old I am.
Wow.
I am a Lee Davis graduate. I'm from the Mechanicsville, Richmond, Virginia area.
Which is
And
kind of how we crossed paths,
that's
because we
right.
actually didn't know each other, but we had people that we knew in common.
That's exactly right. It's a
Too
small
funny.
world, man.
Yes, it is.
That's crazy. So yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna try to keep it short and not boring, but yeah, I started out playing guitar when I was 12. That was 87.
Yep.
Playing rock and metal stuff. Eventually that led to other styles and other instruments. And what I do nowadays is kind of an electronic, maybe a Radiohead meets Daft Punk kind of thing, for lack of better words. I play live, I do remixes, I do production here in my home studio. I'm in Queens, New York.
Nice.
Been here since '02.
Okay.
And
So you
yeah,
moved to New York about the time that my wife and I left. So where are you out in Queens? What part?
I'm in Astoria.
No, that's where I used to live. We did talk about that. I used to live all the way down on the last block of Ditmars Boulevard,
Right on.
across from the park.
Oh, I've walked past that plenty of time. Know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a bunch of little apartment buildings on the side there, like 3-story apartment buildings where you've got like 2 apartments per floor.
Yep.
That's where I and my roommate, who is also a Lee Davis grad, lived there for quite a while. That's too funny.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. I won't even tell you what my rent was. That was a good 20 years ago.
Oh, it's probably tripled now, man. They're trying to freeze us out. I'll tell you what.
I heard it's kind of like the new Williamsburg. It's up and coming now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
don't sound
rent-wise,
very
that
encouraged by that.
sucks. I mean, accoutrements wise, that it's great, but other than that,
Right.
man, oh, it's driving the cost up. But hey, I can't complain. It's beautiful. The people here are nice. I'm digging it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, man. It's no problem. Yeah, I enjoyed here in New York. I've been doing a little bit of dabbling and acting all across my life. Am I good at it or not? I don't know, but goofing off with it's been fun. I've been doing a couple little small movies here and there and a couple web shorts, and I'm trying to do more with that in addition to the music. And that's
Nice.
me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you said you started out playing guitar at like 12. Did you grow up in a creative household? Did you gravitate towards that, or
I
was that
did.
something you didn't?
I did actually. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did. I was fortunate enough to have 3 big sisters who loved music, and my parents as well. My dad actually played some guitar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So as you got older, then you guitar player, did that expand into other instruments? Right? Were you in a band when you were in junior high and high school? What did that evolution look like for you?
Yeah, I was in a few bands. doing metal type stuff. And yeah, it did evolve because I got from from metal into alternative into other stuff and college rock type stuff. And as I got into industrial and all, that got me into synthesizers more and went to house music. And that's where the production started kicking in.
Hmm.
I started leaning in that direction a bit more, and that really threw open the door for me. Interest in meeting people wise.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And it's funny because I think, I mean, you've heard my other interviews or other
yeah,
discussions. We talk a lot about kind of the power of the internet and kind of breaking things down a bit. And you talked about dabbling in production and stuff now.
yeah,
Um, so it sounds like you've kind of got an in-home production studio where you live, which is awesome.
yeah. It's fun,
You
man.
so you kind of gravitated towards that. Is that Was that intentional as your music evolved? Was it the idea that you were going to just kind of do it on your own terms? How did that come about?
Yeah, a little bit of that. I mean, like, it went from I've met a lot of good people in bands, and then there's also, some times where you're like, oh man, people can't practice or this person's moved away. And after a while, I was like, well, what if I could just replicate this all on my, at the time, 4 track, my Tascam 4 track, and then computer, and then I started. It came in that way as kind of a compensation for being an electronic Jerry Van Dyke or something like that, a one man band. It turned
Right.
into from there like, hey, no, I actually like doing this not as a backup, but I really like it as having the freedom to just lay anything down I want, whether it's 4 tracks or ultimate, when computers got better, hundreds if you want, and it threw the window open pretty severely. So that's that's a quick round off of how I got there, and I'm glad I did. I mean, just I love tinkering in the studio and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that so? So one of the things about me is that I'm always motivated by kind of learning stuff and that
Yes,
experimentation. It sounds like, is that the same for you?
yes, sir. Up and
Yeah.
down. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even with me, just like even everything from writing to doing this podcast and everything else. When I started doing this, it was interesting because I had been a journalist for 10 years. I've done more than my fair share of interviews, so I felt very
yeah.
comfortable with this aspect of it. But man, getting into audio editing and looking at 4 tracks and everything else and recording and mics and all that stuff, that's been a whole new space for me.
Oh,
Um,
great.
it's been interesting. Even like today, trying to set this stuff up, there's always little nuances and tweaks and everything. I will say, kind of jokingly, I feel validated. So you mentioned Tascam. That's ultimately where I landed. We
Ah,
probably
nice.
own the same 4 track that I'm
Ah, that's
using to record
cool.
this now. So I tended to overdo my homework and kind of researching and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So it's validating to hear that somebody who does this pretty frequently and has done for years, it's kind of the same type of equipment. So
yeah,
that's good.
definitely, man.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's been interesting. I think, I don't know about you, but one of the things that I look at when I'm playing around with stuff is the challenge around getting an idea like this and then sustaining it. The idea for this podcast kind of came about through conversations that I have with friends and kind of capturing this lightning in a bottle that I wanted to record.
Mm-hmm.
And so conceptually, it's really motivating. But I will say, as I get into this, and I'm now kind of working on the second round of interviews, and I've got like 9 or 10 at this point that I'm trying to edit and get out.
Wow.
I grossly underestimated the amount of time and energy that goes into the audio aspect and the editing and kind of piecing all this stuff together.
Oh yeah, it could
Um,
stack up with that. Man, I can see how it might get overwhelming. Yeah.
yeah. So what does that look like for you? So when you're kind of doing all these different things, right? So you've got the music and the producing and the film stuff that you mentioned and the acting. Um, how do you kind of juggle all that? How do you kind of make sure that you're making progress and then not burning yourself out?
Oh, making progress. Oh, I haven't tried that yet. No, no, I mean, and I want to add in there. I have a day job as well. I think it's good to be like completely honest.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
doing computer stuff. I make online multimedia training with a small company out of Jersey City.
Mhm.
So yeah, it gets to be a bit much. I mean, now on one hand, when you have a lot of different things going on, it does keep everything fresh because there's not a lot of jadedness in one particular area.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it creates a real time management. I mean, need, and constraints can be healthy for creative processes, if they're balanced, I believe.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I
Yeah.
mean, I work in a creative field myself during my day job, and I work with a lot of creatives. I'm not writing anymore for a living, but I'm leading teams of creatives, whether they're designers or writers or web designers or whatever. And
Yeah.
I definitely feel like as a creative person, you can produce your best work with some constraints in place. I actually
Yes.
think it's dangerous to have everything too open ended.
Oh, it is. And you know what? That's, to go on it really briefly, that's a new challenge that technology has presented us with. You can buy $100 computer and you can pretty much have, with the right plugins and probably, a max budget of maybe $300 to $500, make the same record technically that Led Zeppelin 4, any of that kind of stuff. You could do that in your living room. Trouble is, now you've got 1,000 tracks, a million plugins. Some of those things got done in the old days. Like, I'll give the Beatles, for an example. They chained two 4 tracks together. Their 4 tracks are pretty much, probably, like, I mean, a little better audio quality, but probably not too different than what we had with our Tascams. And that made them make some creative decisions, because they're like, hey, we don't have 60 or 100 or whatever tracks to work with. We got to get good within these boundaries.
Right.
Now you have anything. And I can't tell you the number of times I've sat in front of the computer scratching my head going, okay, which of these 300 synthesizers do I want on this track? And that might sound cool at first, but you get analysis paralysis after that for a while. And it's just, you got to be careful. Yeah, it's a new set of
Yeah.
challenges.
So it's funny you mentioned that. So how do you deal with that? Because I was actually reading an article literally last night that talked about kind of the evolution of music, and somebody was joking about kind of music from the late '90s, early aughts, and how some of that sounds really stale, and kind of that evolution of everything sounding so perfect and so electronic,
Yeah,
and how bands are now trying to get back to more of that organic sound.
yeah.
Um, and yet, so one of my favorite bands is Radiohead. So when you talk about some of your influences and kind of where you're at, I completely get it. But I think what's interesting about that space is it's kind of taking, some of those bands are taking technology and then using it in such a way that it's really distorting it,
Yes.
to the extent that it's not truly, it's taking digital and trying to reverse engineer it.
Oh, yeah,
Is
absolutely.
that kind of where you play around in that space?
I spend 99.1% of my time in that space. Yes, the happy
Okay.
accident space and
Right.
the dirty classroom film projector sounds. But yeah, I always love those accidents of technology and all that kind of griming things up, and the sound of a tape that was down in the floorboards of your Datsun or something like that. You
Right.
know, getting that, and I don't live in the perfect zone. You know, as far as as far as anything really, but especially when it comes to audio. Um, I know there's a place for pop and really scrub clean stuff, and I'm not about to poop on that at all. But I
Right.
really love the sound of something that might be behind the wall in your living room, or something that sounds like it's got some Rice Krispies in it or something. It's just groovy stuff, man. I
Yeah.
love
And
it.
what do you think it is that attracts you to that type of sound?
I, that you're not planning on what you're hearing.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I'm not somebody that is trying to be the best guitar player, the best singer, um, or scrub my audio really clean, or or achieve any kind of, well, I don't want to load this, but really egotistical goal with it. That's not where I come from. I come from feeling, and if I can hear something that sounds a little bit creepy or a little bit neat, or whoa, it sounds like that was recorded in a field somewhere and take me somewhere else, that's why I like music. That
Yeah.
might just be me, but I think there's other people out there like me too. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And I think there's a reason that music is trending back towards that. And I think there's a reason that even today we've got millennials that are still listening to stuff that we grew up with, if not
Yeah,
earlier, right? Millennials, and kids in high school and college are still walking around wearing Led Zeppelin t-shirts and still
yes.
know some of that older 70s kind of rock.
I
So,
love it. I love it, man, because I'll talk to somebody who's 18 and they're like, I love Led Zeppelin 4. I'm down the coffee shop, and they didn't get to live it. To them, it's like it's like, I don't know, Louis Armstrong or something to us. It's like, I've heard
Right.
of it in a book, but never, lived through that. And it's great to hear their side of it and say, and just see them talk about it with things you might not have had. They didn't hear it on the radio. They don't listen to radio.
Right.
It's a really neat perspective. Listen to what they have to say about these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you feel like that is, so when you think about people that you meet through your music and the stuff that you're doing, do you feel like it resonates with people of all different kinds of ages? Because New York's a pretty eclectic niche, a pretty eclectic place. You can kind of
Yeah.
find your niche with anybody, right?
It is. Now, I mean, that said, I'll come upon the challenge that I've had. The studio has enabled me. I don't want to skirt your question, but I just want to give some
Yep.
preamble to it real quick if I
Yep.
can.
Please.
And you got to cut me off, man, because I'll have a cup of coffee and I'll go on forever. You got to be like, yo,
Nah,
calm down,
don't worry about it.
buddy.
It's
It's
good.
one of the deals is with the studio and the ability to do all this stuff yourself. A crime I have is the ability to disappear up my own ass and just be down in the studio for
Yep.
weeks or just do things here and not interface with people. And so really I don't know who likes my music. One of the big challenges I've had, I can produce anything I want down here. I'm not saying talent wise, I'm just saying intent. Um,
Yep.
but when it comes to promotion and connecting, I suck, dude. I I this is my challenge, and that is something I'm learning and getting good at. I watch other people do it awesomely. I don't like talking about myself and walking up to somebody going, "Hey, you should get my album." That creeps me out. I feel like I've just imposed on somebody's day.
Yeah.
So I need to get, if I want to take this anywhere, I need to get hip to making that happen. So
And
I'll
I
be,
think
that's me.
no, I think that's a common challenge with artists. I don't want to say it's a problem because I think there's a certain authenticity that comes from that, and I get that. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I've heard that again from other people in all different kinds of disciplines and talents. There's an awkwardness
Yeah.
to that just doesn't suit some people. And it's not always reflective of somebody's abilities. So I totally get it. I mean, I had that as a writer. And I think, it used to be right in that old model, you had to do that. So I think about it in my world is you could write all kinds of stuff, but you could never publish it yourself. So you had to go back and find somebody to publish it. You needed
Right.
that external validation.
Yes.
And so you had to get an agent or somebody to kind of hustle for you and promote you on your own behalf. And I think what you're talking about here and that kind of awkwardness for you is one of the potential downsides of everything that technology gives us today.
You're
Because you
right.
can do everything in house. You can put your music on iTunes. You know, you can do all kinds of stuff. You can put videos on YouTube and you can build a following on Facebook or any other kind of platforms, but you have to be willing to do that promotion and marketing yourself.
And that's its own
And
skill set. Yeah.
yeah, it totally is.
Yeah,
It
man.
totally is. One of the big things that was eye opening for me. So again, I spent about 9 or 10 years self-employed as a financial journalist when I was living
Wow.
down in Astoria, and I found one of the most challenging things for me during that time was I only spent about 50% of my time actually writing. The other 50% of my time was all the administrative crap that I had to do and
Yeah.
kind of trying to get to meet people and pitching story ideas, which is a part of journalism, and getting paid and having all these conversations and doing all this stuff that quite honestly felt like a pain in the neck at the time.
Yeah.
And it really forced me to build some of that skill set that absolutely originally for me was extremely awkward.
Yeah. I can't, I can't sidestep it though. I really need to get good at it and or find someone else who likes doing it. And I mean, before I can even get to that level, I really need to learn to hustle a little better. So I mean, hey, I'll be completely honest here. I have tons of records. I like them. I don't know if they're any good to the public or not, but I had fun making them. That's the way I'll say it. I really had a lot of fun making them. That translates sometimes and doesn't others. But I'm not gonna lie to you and say I have like 500,000 fans. That's not the truth. That's a challenge of mine that I'm really now trying to espouse that journey and figure out what's necessary to treat that like a creative thing too, because it is.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. So that's I, it certainly sounds like that's not the goal for you though, right?
It's hard to say. I don't want to ever put a cap on it. I
Yep.
welcome anybody that want to listen to me. But no, I'm not. I'm definitely not trying to be, Justin Timberlake or anybody that's really done a solid job of earning across the board status. I mean, I think somebody like Radiohead's a bit of a miracle that they've gotten
Absolutely.
that big. If I had anywhere near that or a quarter or a 15th of it, I'd be, oh man, I'd be, heck yeah. But
Yeah. Well, and they're an amazing example of a band again that even at that size does it on their own terms, right? And the
yeah,
way they've released albums and the way they tour and
right.
everything else. And I saw kind of, their tour for this summer. I think they're doing what, 2 dates in the US. There's not that many shows here.
Yeah, you're right.
And they've always done stuff kind of in this amazing kind of neat way.
Yeah.
That's been pretty impressive.
And I
So,
think they had that taste early on with Creep, the single, and they
yep.
did have that world of Zillion Seller and all that. And I think I've read a lot of bios that Tom York and the singer and
Yep.
was talking about. Hey, we were there at the Spring Break '93 MTV special and feeling like that song was really appropriate because we were like, what are we doing here? This is crazy, hey, it's good that we're successful, but damn. And I think that informed a lot of their decisions later. But hey,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
doing all
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, I mean, so what's the sweet spot for you? I mean, there's certain elements of the creative process that some people really like. I always like to joke. There's the old quote that says, "No writer likes writing, but every writer likes having written something."
Yeah.
You talked a lot about your enjoyment kind of playing around in the studio and kind of seeing how things come out. You use the term happy accidents.
Yes.
Where's kind of that happy space for you when you're going through all this? Is it that moment? Is it the recording? Is it coming up with ideas? Is it the satisfaction of seeing a song completed? What's your favorite part of that whole creative process?
I'm fortunate enough to say that at this stage, it's the entire journey. It's the entire process. I know that wasn't always the case. It was early on a case of I finished my demo or I finished my record. Look, I've done it finally. Honestly, now, and I just put a record out, earlier in January,
Right.
and it just keeps on getting more and more fun. I really scratched my head to find a pain in the butt part of the last three records to go like, damn, I'm tired of this record. Obviously you work on something that
Right.
long, you get a little tired of it, but I wasn't like, thank God that's done. Jeez. I was honestly like, hey, this is neat. I really like doing this and I would love just cranking on that all day. So I know that doesn't help focus the question. I'm sorry.
No,
But
but it's a legitimate answer because there are certain things about the process. So, there are some writers that like the first draft.
yeah,
I will admit that I like coming up with the first draft. It can almost be kind of this manic process for me. I get this movie in my head, I've got to put it down on paper, and I struggle to kind of keep up with my thoughts.
right.
The editing and revision process is really tough for me because that's what feels like the real work,
Mhm.
but it also is really what has the biggest impact on quality of writing. So, I mean, there are things that to me are not my favorite part of the process, but it is part of it's part of the whole package.
Yes, it is. It's interesting you bring up the editing and process there, and I don't know if it can be quite the same. Well, I guess anything's open. It can be the same in writing. Um, what I've found in the last couple records that's transformed is the editing process. Instead of just being the all right, creativity's over with. Now we got to get down to the business of making it usable. Instead of that, the editing and refinement process has become its own creative springboard. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had really like crazy right turns or left turns of songs that I never planned on. That I had a song that I was like, okay, that's a decent song. And then in reducing or flipping some of the stuff, I'm like, that's a new song now. I really like it better. That
Mm.
happened about five of the songs on this new record, and it was a pleasant surprise because you're finishing the record in the last couple of weeks and you're like, I feel like I just made these songs. I don't feel like they've been sitting with me for months. um yeah, I don't want to sound like Pollyanna about it or too positive thinking, but I just have a lot of fun with it, man. Just all the stuff. And
Yeah.
even the constraints that's really introduced a lot of cool places. Like, let me go off on this quickly. I choose arbitrary constraints now. I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna make a song, and I can only use the instrumentation that somebody used on I don't know, Hey Jude, or not sound like that song, but like take,
Right.
okay, I want a piano in this, or I want to use, Welcome to the Jungle, but or something, some crappy song, sorry, like that,
Right.
and
Yeah.
flip
Yeah. Yeah.
flip that into what would that sound like if that was a house music track. Um, Goofy, stupid little games like that really jar stuff, the rocks loose in my head. Um,
Okay.
and so it's almost like a gamification of songwriting.
Huh. That's the first time I've heard somebody describe it like that. But that does sound like it would be a lot of fun.
Oh man, it is. Yeah,
A little bit of detective work. Yeah,
it
that's
really
great.
is. Yeah.
How did you so given where you're at now, we talked a little bit about starting out and what you played and kind of evolution. How did you find your voice in terms of your music and where you're at, or how do you kind of evolve your voice?
Boy, that's a good question. For me, I had the blessing and curse of liking a lot of different genres. So when I was starting out with the production, I would have maybe a metal pseudonym and then a house music pseudonym and then a drum and bass, all these alternative shoegaze things, all these different almost acts I would create for myself. And
Yep.
it got hard to manage after a while. And then I hit my 30s and I'm like, screw it. Why don't we put it all in a blender? Why don't we make something that's a rock, country, techno, drum and bass, hip hop band?
Right.
And fortunately, that's really what a lot of people are doing right now. They're saying, I don't give a heck, and what I am is what I am. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, why not do the same thing? So finding my voice became kind of a sum total of all the phases I went through in my life that I wanted to hang on, you know, to and fuse it together in ways.
Got it. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your acting because we've talked quite a bit about your music.
Okay.
How did you end up kind of ending up doing films and things on the side? Was that something you did when you were younger?
A little bit. Always by accident, and always when someone else had a project going. Hey Dan, do you want to be a dumbass in this flick? Oh yeah, I'll do that. It sounds good. I'm gonna play a good dumbass, man. This is great.
Right.
Did some stuff in college. I had a buddy that was doing that. And then little things off and on, little more like skit type things. And then there was a buddy of mine who I made music with for a while. It was also an actor, is an actor, and he's in this New Jersey film company called Phoenix Films. And it was a great bunch of people, and they were just making their own films. And they're like, "Hey, would you like to do this little thing and that little thing?" I'm like, "Sure, this is great. What you guys are doing is cool." Um, so really kind of by accident and peripherally, just by knowing people. And that built up the taste where I wanted to, in the last few years, take a few acting classes and say, why the heck not? It's one of the regrets I have from high school is that I didn't
Mm.
do drama. I
Got
wanted
it.
to, I never did. Now I am. It's just a little late.
My drama career ended when I left Lee Davis.
Oh yeah.
I did stuff there, but then not once I left. That was about it.
Oh, I've done. Yeah, I did. It's always there. That's the cool thing about the internet age too. You want to act in somebody's skit, find
Yep.
somebody doing it, and you're back on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Did you listen to the interview that I did with my buddy Brian, who's out in Los Angeles?
Yes, and I think
See,
it's very freaking cool what he's doing. That's like a dream job. I love it.
he just again, you talk about hustle and being in the right place at the right time. That's awesome. But he talked a lot about that 48-hour film festival.
Yeah, I love
That
it.
might be worth you and you guys looking into because I'm sure there's got to be one in New York. There's
Oh,
got to be one there.
there is. My wife did one. My
Oh,
wife,
did she?
yeah, she did some with a friend of hers, and she told me about it. And she was just telling me about a little bit of it, and I forget what I was doing that weekend because it sounded like something I really loved. But she told me the whole rundown. I'm like, next time, man, I'm doing that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've never done one. I think there's probably a group here in Philly too, but I have not kind of looked into it. It's a little daunting for me. I don't feel for somebody like Brian who's done so much of that stuff. It feels very organic for him, and he's got a team that he's worked with so much, and they've all partnered on stuff. For me, it's kind of crazy, a little
Oh,
scary,
you
but
talk
yeah,
about creative constraints. 48 hours for a
yeah,
film.
right,
Get out of
right.
here, man.
And then he talked about the arbitrary stuff of like doing the one track through the trunk and everything else.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
amazing.
awesome. It's awesome.
I got a lot of respect for people that pull that off, man. That's just I'd probably be there holding a boom mic and soaking up what everybody else is doing and go like, all right,
Yeah.
you're geniuses.
And the funniest thing is when I'm out that way and he and I get together, you can tell from the discussion with him, he is the most laid back guy. And he and CC both are just examples of people that live in that space and absolutely have like no ego. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think I was fortunate enough to meet Brian when I was in school. I'm not. Did he go to Lee Davis?
He did not.
He didn't.
No.
Okay, that's why.
No, he
Okay.
was out more out towards Fredericksburg. We just knew him because he came to work for us at the park.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why.
Hey, Kings Dominion. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
I had a lot of buddies that worked there in the clown band, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Who?
yeah. Well, Gordy Hab worked in the clown band.
Yeah.
Greg Etheridge worked in the clown band. I'm trying
I
to
don't
think.
Greg. I know a lot of the older guys and the founding guys
Yeah,
because originally, that started out as purely a Lee Davis band.
yeah,
That came out of the head of the marching band at Lee Davis who got him together and got him to audition. So when that started in the mid to late 80s, they were all Lee Davis marching band folks that kind of ended up through that. I know it evolved a little bit as kind of some of the other high schools got built. But
yeah.
yeah, that's no surprise that we know a lot of the same people. So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's great. That looked like a lot of fun too. I remember going there during the summer, just watching the clown band do its stuff. That's rad. And then I
It
had
was
friends with.
it was delayed childhood is what it was. We all
Yes,
had lots of fun in that space. But anyway,
darn right.
so really quickly, one of the questions that I like to ask people is how they define creative success.
Yes, I'm
Oh,
glad you.
you got serious really
Yeah,
quickly. I heard that. You're
I'm
like,
glad
ooh,
to.
I have a legitimate answer for this.
Oh, this is nervous laughter
It's
here.
not meant to be that deep. It's okay.
Oh no, that's cool. It's a topic I've given a lot of thought in my adult life, and a lot of my journeys turned inside. Creative success is if you can, to me at least, is if you can still push your own buttons. Can you still get yourself psyched up about whatever you're doing? Art, writing, acting, singing, uh, any of that stuff, woodworking. If you can still push your own buttons, that's creative success. Anything that comes from that, monetary, status, whatever, is peripheral. And I would love to, the way I see monetary success is I'd love it so that I can continue doing the studio work. Not so much to buy a gold Ferrari or solid gold diamond encrusted freaking bathroom or whatever the hell. I don't care about that stuff. Give me a smallish house or apartment. Um, it's my studio, pretty much what I have now, and the ability to continue doing that and meet more people and interface with that and share that and learn from them. That's success to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Having that
saying?
freedom to do what you want and how you want it. And
Freedom,
it's
yes.
really easy to overlook that. I've appreciated that as I've gotten older. And it's funny because that's not what I would have said creative success looked like 15 years ago. I would have given you a very different answer on
Same
that.
here. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, same here. I mean, I think it's worthwhile to add this in that might have colored my decision. When I moved here, about 6 weeks after I moved here, I met who's my wife now. My wife Liz, she worked for Tommy Boy Records. It was a pretty big record
Yep.
company at the time, and we would go to industry events and stuff like that. I'd tag along, and I watched the industry go down the toilet. And every time we would go out, like the next week, this is 2002, 2003 area, we
Mm-hmm.
would go out and we'd be down the bar or something like that, and we'd see another person she knew. Hey, how's it going? Oh, this label folded. Oh, this radio promotion company folded. It was going to crap. And so
Yeah.
that's what started to inform me about, because I came to New York. Hey, Dan, let's go up there and get a record deal. Naive, you know,
Oh, that's why
26
I
year old.
came to New York. I had written my first book. I thought that's what you had to do as a writer and a novelist.
Right.
You had to move to New York and get an agent. I
Yeah,
didn't know any better. That was shit. That was 1997. I
right.
get it.
Yeah, no, it's like Escape from Richmond and all that. It's
Yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah.
and no disrespect to Richmond because I love Richmond, but just for what we needed to do at that time. Maybe now,
Yes.
just like we were speaking, I think you were speaking on another of the podcast, you could probably do Richmond now with the.
Oh, it would be a very different mindset if I were coming out of college. And I went to VCU undergrad. It would be a very different frame of mind for me if I were in my early 20s now down in Richmond.
Fellow
Absolutely.
fellow VCU peeps. That's all good.
Yep.
Yeah, I went there myself. I love VCU.
Yep.
And anyway, I mean, just to wrap that last thought up of mine is what I came up there was, to get a record deal and be famous and do all that, whatever. Um, well, getting a record deal looked less and less attractive all the time. And by the time, after about 2 years of me being here, I'm going like, I don't know what the plot is anymore. I make music. I love to make a living doing it. I don't have a kind of end goal other than, what I do, keep making records, keep playing. And I tell you, Alan, that's something that kind of continues to this day. Um, what is the goal? There
Right.
is no single goal line anymore. Now you've officially crossed over. You're on Capitol Records or whatever.
Right.
Nah, even if you could get a deal, it doesn't look the same. They reach into a lot of different buckets that they didn't before, and you get it's basically a credit card at 67% interest. I don't want that.
Right. Right. And I've got another interview coming out of this batch that you'll have to listen to that you'll like. A
Mm,
guy named Rob Mueller, who is also a producer, and he used to be in a band that got on a label and stuff. And he talks about the reality is it, that once you sign that contract, you've worked so hard to kind of get to that level of your career and to stand out from other musicians and bands. But once you get signed to a label, you're back at the bottom because
yes,
then you have to differentiate yourself and come up through there and be worthy of the promotion and the support and the money that they put behind some artists and not others.
you're right.
Um, and it's the same thing for authors, right? Even if you go the traditional route and you get a book published, how many publishers actually put real money behind artists, behind writers and novelists and promote them? It's the same thing. Um, Screenwriters have the same issue. You can make all kinds of money selling options and scripts that linger in development hell and never get produced. I think any type of art, when you get down to the monetary aspect, there's that whole level. And you don't realize that when you're younger. You think if you get to a certain point, you can check the box because then money's involved. But
That's
once
right.
money is involved, it's a whole other game. It's a whole other level of success.
Yeah, you realize it's not as binary of a situation as you thought. Like, not made it, now I've made it. No, it's
Yeah.
not like
And
that
it's
at
not
all.
always based on creative ability either.
Yeah, it's oh, yeah.
Right.
I won't
Right.
even go down that rabbit hole. You're
Yeah,
right.
we'll leave it there. But yeah, so
Yeah,
it's not necessarily a
I could.
direct correlation between the two.
Yeah, I don't want to use up all your megabytes there.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
man, and also, for me, I've gotten a lot more anal about what I like to do, and I've had a lot of friends say, "Hey, Dan, why don't you just go make library music? Why don't you do this or that?" And I think I'd be doing anybody a disservice because it's not what I love to do. Um, I would actually rather do a day job doing something else if my music didn't pay for myself than doing a work for hire. And that's not me crapping on the work for hire situation at all. It's just I don't think I'm the right configuration for that with my music because I don't get excited about it in that capacity. And you could hear it. If I put I don't want to put out half assed things because I had to do it for hire. Other people do that remarkably. Going back to Gordy Hab,
Right.
man, look him up. That cat is ultra successful making music for all the Star Wars games right now.
Yeah.
I hope that, I tell you what, I hope is like, John Williams, God bless him, he's not going to be with us uh, that much longer. Excellent composer. I
Yeah.
hope Gordy gets a damn slot, dude. He can do it. I know he can
Right.
do it. That would be amazing. And
Yeah.
knowing him, he's probably already on the trail for it. So man, that
Yeah.
that is somebody that does that remarkably. I wish I had that skill and interest, but I'm just not. I'm not wired that way. I'm a little different when it comes to
Yeah.
acting. Totally different story. Somebody's like, "We need a janitor." I'm your janitor. That's fine.
Right.
Different world.
Yeah. 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 What do you think is one of the greatest or largest lessons you've learned creatively?
Well, I mean, before I go into anything else, humility has been a big one that I've learned
Okay.
on the journey. I know that's kind of, everybody might say that, but that's a big one.
You're actually the first one to bring that up.
Oh, really?
So I don't downplay it. Yeah. You're the first person I've interviewed to actually come at it from that angle. So yeah.
Humility is important. And you bring up the other people on the podcast. I mean, I remember, like Cece, amazing, always humble, never snobby, ultra talented person.
Right.
Jason Mraz, same way. I've not
Yeah.
spoken to him in years, but one thing I remembered about him is he was nice as he could be, and I praise the same way. I bet he is because I don't think he would have achieved that success without the attitude that he had. Amazing.
Right. Right.
Um,
And just to jump in there really quickly for our listeners, Jason Mraz also went to the same high school that we went to. He is quite obviously or the probably most well known artists to come out of our area. Not that necessarily that suburb of Richmond is known for fostering artists, but I would like to think there's a number of us who've come out of there.
Well, don't forget about Guar and Dirt Woman, though. Okay,
That's
so we got to
true.
keep them on the radar.
Guar is a native Richmond band. That's right. I'm actually trying to line up an interview with an old friend of mine who was a costumer at King's Dominion that also did costume work for Guar out of their warehouse in Richmond back in the 80s and early 90s. And she had some amazing stories about helping them with their props and costumes and stuff.
How effing cool is that? Man?
Yeah, I got to get a hold of her. And she I think she's in New York now. I've got to hunt her down. But yeah. Yeah.
Neat. Yeah, humility is important. You can't be an asshole long term and be of any value to anyone. You just can't. Short term, maybe you can get up the ladder a little bit, but it's just not good. I mean, it's better to be holistic and help people. Yeah, don't get stepped on and all that, but just be nice. It's not that hard, you know.
Right.
It's not, and so many people screw that step up.
Well, and one of the other questions I like to ask is what kind of advice you have for other people who are looking to be creative and kind of growing their creativity. And I think you hit on a good one there with the humility piece. But what other advice would you give people who are at different phases in their creative success?
Well, I'm going to expand it beyond just creative, if that's all right. I think it applies to that, but I think one of the biggest lessons in my life that just gets more true and true every day, more accented. You will get what you focus on, good or bad. You'll get more of what you focus on. You want to worry, you're going to get what you worry about. You want to think good, you're going to get more of that. You're going to pull it in. I have not been able to reach back into my personal history and find a time where there was not the case. Whenever I was sweating something or thinking, oh, that person's going to one-up me or they're going to do this, I pull in crap and I pull in crappy thoughts and stuff goes badly. When I think, oh, man, it's going to be fun to achieve this, I can really create some value for somebody with that, man, it's a good idea. It usually turns out like that. You will get what you focus on, I'll guarantee it.
Awesome. Totally agree.
Yeah. That's what I found to be the case. And it allows me to step back when I've had a bad day and go, hold on, all right, well, it's cool, but let's not carry the bad any further. And meditation and mindfulness and all that has really helped me with that too. That's a whole other volume I can go on, but I mean, that's, I'll abbreviate it here.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think and so that the meditation not only helps, right? So it's about, I look at the world and say there's so many things in the world you can't control, but one of the things you can control is how you react to things and how you handle things.
Yes, sir.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah, man.
Does the meditation help with the creative process too? Does that help with some of the ideation?
Yes, it does.
Wow, that's a quick answer. Awesome.
It does. It gets rid of the judgmental voice. And one of the problems I had in the creative process was it's great to have a judgmental voice, but just like making a recipe, it's got to be in the right order and syntax. If you judge right in the early creative stages too much, nothing gets on the page. It's like you don't you don't take the box of cake mix and stick it straight in the oven. There are other steps to do before you do that.
Right.
I make cake with the box. I just put myself on blast there. Sorry.
Right. No, it's okay.
But like, there are steps to do that, and syntax is very important for anything you do. I'm going tangentially a little bit here, but the same thing with the hard work. I hear a lot of people say hard work equals success. It's hard work. Blah, blah, blah. Hard work, once you've done the vibrational work of finding out what you want and getting yourself jazzed about it, is appropriate. Yeah, you're not just going to bliss out and find yourself at the goal, but at the same time, hard work and stressing yourself out, yeah, you might achieve what you want, but it sucks,
Right.
So I'm not one of these hard work people. I think that is one piece of the engine, and too many people are quick to just give the old Norman Rockwell kind of era, hard work, sweat, yeah, all right, cool. But there's a lot of other stuff, keeping your soul clean, man, you're not to hippie out on you, but I mean, just to,
yeah, no, I'm with you.
Just keeping your vibes clean. I'm here to put down a good album. I'm going to record an album and have fun with it. That kind of intent goes a long way before you turn the hard work switch on. If you turn hard work on first, it's like, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff and work hard, and it might not even make sense. Well,
Right. Well, and
well, but
so
anyway.
work is a four-letter word, right?
Yes,
We
it
have
is.
English language has such a negative connotation with the idea of work.
Yeah,
And what I hear you saying is you're taking that mindset of right, truly, authentically enjoy what you're doing. So it doesn't feel like work,
that's right. That's
right?
right. I mean, like, there's times, yeah, you just, you stay up till 3 in the morning doing that, and you did work. That's an important distinction. Some people think if you had fun, it wasn't work. That's BS.
Right.
Oh man,
Absolutely.
read any interviews and biographies. People who are masters love what they do. Yeah, that's not to say every minute was golden, you know,
Right.
but
Right.
the majority of it was, or else they wouldn't be doing it.
And loving it is what makes you stick with it and put the time in
Yes,
and not give up, right?
that's the persistence juice right there. Any
Totally. Yeah.
other fuel doesn't take you as far.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I
So
found.
Dan, no, go ahead.
That's what I found, at least.
Got it. Got it. So one last question for you. This has been great.
Yeah.
Now comes the best part for you. So tell people how they can reach you and kind of how they can check out your music and look you up online.
Oh yeah, and I appreciate it. You can find my music at Daniel7. That's Daniel and the number 7.tv. And you can also find it on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Apple Music, any of that stuff. Daniel and the number 7. And also, yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Daniel7Music. I post stuff about my acting and my music there.
Mm-hmm.
The latest film I'm in just came out. It's called Clandestine. Um, I play a dirty meth head creep in it, and it was fun. You can find that on Amazon and iTunes as well.
I so want to ask how you kind of get into the mind of a meth head, but I'll stop.
I don't know. Actually, I'm lucky enough to say I don't have experience there, but I got a lot of experience being a general goofball or whatever. So maybe I just tried to play that into it. I don't know.
Too funny. All right. Well, Dan, this has been great. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did, now, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Good.
This is great.
Yeah, of course. It's been a lot of fun, and I love some of your answers that you gave. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right. I want to thank Daniel for doing the podcast. I certainly appreciated chatting with him. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. If you liked the episode, shoot me an email and let me know. And in fact, to show you my appreciation, I'll send a few stickers and buttons your way as my way of saying thanks. Just remember to include your mailing address in your email. You can reach me at headheartandhustle@gmail.com or certainly through our website. You can also get email updates from us, which are fairly inconsistent, I will admit, depending on how busy my life gets. Visit headheartandhustle.com/newsletter to sign up. Also, remember that you can find us on the web at headheartandhustle.com as well as on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, even Google+. Our logo was created by Meg Shear, and if you really enjoy it, you can find her other work on Society 6 at Meg's Stuff. The music that I use in each episode was written and performed by my friends in the band Starch to Sugar. You can check them out at starchtossugar.com and on Facebook. Lastly, if you're interested in being interviewed for a future episode, send me a note, again, at headheartandhustle@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, and go create something.